Alright guys, welcome back to another MCreator procedure tutorial. So today we're going to be looking at the for each entity except as between block, and there's another block that we have which is a very similar thing, which is for each entity as, at, and then the square size. So we'll be looking at both of these blocks today, and I'll be showing some examples of how this script basically works and how you can basically use it. So we'll be testing these out as we go. So let's start with finding the blocks. To find the blocks, what you can do is you can go to world procedures and then actions, and then if you scroll down a little bit, there are two blocks down here. There is one for each entity, which is an iterator. We'll get into that in just a little bit because we haven't covered that part yet. And then there's the size, the location of where it's located. So where it's basically going to happen when you're actually doing the test. And for square, cube, and then there's a for. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. And then there is one called for each entity except, and then it says no entity as iterator, which we'll again get into, between X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z. So this is the second position. There is also one called for each player in current world for iterator. So this is for players specifically, where you can do players with entities as well with these ones. So once you have those blocks, I have changed it a little bit because we don't actually have a radius like we do with the other one. So if we go back over here, we can see that this one has a cube size. So this cube size is no different than basically having 4. So think of it as a range. So we have 2 directions, one direction, 2 directions in the other direction. So that's like 2 blocks in total on each direction for X, Y, and Z. And that would be no different than a square cube size of 4 because it's divided by 2 for this one. All right, so basically no entity is just going to not have any exception. With this particular block, you can't actually do any tags or like a different dynamic kind of entity. So for example, if you wanted to basically test for a pig or whatever, it's not possible to have an exception for any kind of entity, like any kind of pig or anything like that. It's more designed for a specific target. So for example, I have event/target entity with this trigger. So this is going to be where I'm going to do it. So we could make an exception for us if we really wanted to, but we'll get into that in a little bit. All I'm doing basically here is offsetting the coordinates, and we're going to print out a message as well for our direction. So I'm going to set that up really quickly, and then we'll get into basically how the script works. All right, so I have a simple procedure printing out the X, Y, and Z position. We don't actually need that inside the loop. We can have it outside, and that will be fine. It's not going to really make any difference on the inside with what we have set up. So with that being said, this is just going to kind of give us an idea what the trigger is for the X, Y, and Z position. So in this case, I already know what it is. It's going to be the axis point of that particular block. So we will get into that in a little bit, but what we're basically doing is we're doing a radius or a cube size of 2, or pardon me, 4 for this one. We're not specifying any particular entity that should be accepted, like to have an exception to. And we are making a wait time, which basically increases each loop interval, and then we're delaying the message from being posted to the player, which is our event/target entity, of the event or entity name, and then we're getting the display name of the entity iterator. So basically every entity that is in this range is going to be as a entity iterator. So we use that block in order to basically use an event for that particular entity. So in that case, we're just getting the display name of every entity in that cube size. So I also have it onto the action bar. This will make it a little bit easier to actually see with the delay and stuff, and it will keep it clean. So we could actually go ahead and even print out this directly to the game now that we have that part set up. So we'll just do this and disable that so we can kind of see what's going on. All right, so let's go ahead and save and we'll do our first test. All right, so I have a simple world with 2 chickens and a pig. Each one has their own custom name. Pig, pork chop, there is chicken Doug, and chicken Chuck. And I just gave them a name tag for their names so we can kind of see what's going on. So let's go ahead and right click on this particular block, and we can see that the coordinates are basically 40, 64, and -50. That wasn't by any design, but that's where we clicked. Now we can tell that it didn't have any effect on the exact position where we clicked. So this is because there would have been a decimal point of a number behind that. So we can tell that basically when we right click, it's going to be at that axis point of the cube. So it's going to be at the bottom left or bottom west and north corner of the block. So it's right on this axis. If you open up the F3 screen, you can see the axis point where all the lines meet. That's basically where the condition is going to be met. So if we wanted to make sure that the position is offset, we need to actually go 0.5 for each axis point to make sure that the test location is actually center. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Let's take a look at what is being posted from the entity itself. So we'll click on it again. We can see that each entity, including me, is being tested for, including the pig as well. So pork chop, and then there's Chuck and also Doug when we right click on that block. So let's go ahead and go back into the script. So I have another example up here that will kind of explain a little bit more. So again, we covered this one. This one's pretty simple now that we know how those iterators work. So the iterator is just basically the entity that we're selecting. This one doesn't have an exception. And we also have an X, Y, and Z of where the center is of where this cube is going to be running from. So in some cases that might be easier. So the next example I have here, not gone hopefully, is basically just offsetting the position of the X, Y, and Z. So we're going to use the position here that we used with our offset. So it's the same script that we had before. It's just basically offsetting the position before we actually run the script. And then we're offsetting the coordinates. So we're offsetting it 0.5 on the positive direction. So this will center the test exactly center of the block. And then what we're doing is we're running our negative and positive script, and this will basically go ahead and make everything a little bit even. So we can see this when we actually run the script now. So let's go ahead and save this and go into game. Okay, so this will obviously be depending on the trigger that you have. If you're getting entity coordinates of a specific entity or something like that, then it's going to be a little bit different. So just keep that in mind when you're actually doing the coordinates and stuff like that. So it's going to be a little bit different depending on what kind of trigger you have. So if we right click, we can now see that the coordinates is now centered, but we're still getting all the different types of entities within this range. So we're getting us, the pig, and our 2 chickens as well. So let's go ahead and test for one more thing. Now that we have that basically sorted out, we can do a little bit of a different script. This one is going to basically test only for chickens in this case, and we're only going to display the chicken name. Now, the exception only works for one specific entity, so we're not going to have things like excluding all kinds of pigs, all players, or anything like that. So instead, what we have to do is we have to test for a subtype, and we're going to test for the type of entities or tag of entities that we want to be tested for. In this case, I just have a subtype, which is just a specific type of entity. I could use tags as well, entity tags, if I really wanted to. So we're only going to run this script basically for chickens. We're then running everything that we had before, like out here inside that script. So this will only happen when we're running for that, for a chicken. So let's go ahead and plop this down over here. We'll delete that one, and we don't need those coordinates anymore. I have those at the top there. So that's perfectly fine, and now that our position is centered, we can actually test for everything within that particular range. So let's go ahead and save this and give it a quick test. All right, so we're going to pay attention to the action bar, not so much the message being printed out. So we can see Chuck and Doug for chickens were only posted. We'll test that one more time. So Chuck and Doug, it doesn't specify the pig or us, so that basically it works as expected. We're only testing for the chickens in that case. Now there is one more thing that I want to show with the exception. So there's this example here. Basically what we're doing is we're running a specific type of entity. In this case, we're running it for the player. So we're making an exception for the player, and we're going to run the script for every entity except for the player. So let's go ahead and replace this. We don't need these blocks here. And we'll just use this part right here because we have the position already up the top here, and we don't need that anymore. So let's go ahead and save this and give it another quick test. All right, so we're in game. I'm going to stand right above the position so we can basically would get tested for. So we're within that block that we're right clicking on. And we can see chicken, and brown egg. Now that's because the chicken laid brown eggs, because it also tests for items as well. So let's go ahead and try that one more time without the egg. So we have Chuck, Doug, and pork chop, and then it doesn't test for us specifically. So that was with the exception because it's one single entity. So hopefully you guys found this tutorial useful. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe. I have a Discord server if you're interested in basically hanging out with the community, sharing some stuff that you're working on, or basically just participating in, you know, other things that we do on the server. I also post a lot of other interesting stuff that I've been working on. I've been working on a game actually, so in Godot, if you want to follow that, I post regular updates while I'm working on the game and stuff like that on the Discord server as well. And yeah, outside of that, we have a help channel, and it's not exactly prominent with a lot of people getting help. It really depends on who is available to help, and if the issue is too complex. Some people might not know the answer. We need more people that will be able to help with these kinds of questions and stuff. So if you're interested in supporting the community and stuff, we're always looking for people that can help as well. Other than that, yeah, definitely consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys next week with another tutorial. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.